Yo, what's up guys? We're back for another breakdown and predictions video. This week we're going back to London. We're going to be doing UFC Fight Night, Aspinall versus Tybura. Pretty interesting card all the way through. I would say it's one of the weaker cards that we've seen recently over in the UK, but they've got some nice fights, and we're coming off a good week last week for sure. One of the best betting weeks of the year where we hit on pretty much every bet that we made. We made almost 10 units on the night. So we've been really doing well on bets lately on patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. So if you want access to those bets, you know where to go. I already have quite a few bets for this card. And outside of that, man, if you're listening right now, hit that like button. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video. I'd really appreciate if we could get to 100 likes. And put some comments down below. Let's get some interaction. Let's see which fights you agree on in terms of my predictions and which you disagree on. But let's get in this first fight of the night. Here we got Fili taking on Daniel Alvarez, and this is a fight in the flyweight division. It's a good matchup. Both these guys are relatively new to the UFC scene, but they're still pretty high level. With Fili, we saw him debut recently against Muhammad Mokaev, and he ended up losing that fight. He almost submitted him with that knee bar in the third round, but gassed himself out going for the finish and then ended up getting submitted himself. And for Daniel Alvarez, he's making his UFC debut here, but we've seen him on the Contender Series lose a close decision to Carlos Hernandez. And he's a little bit older. He's almost 35 years old, especially for flyweight. That's getting up there. But the guy has kind of taken a step down in competition since the Contender Series fight, and he's handled business. They haven't been the best fighters, but he's finished them all in the first round. So he's getting this opportunity to fight in the UFC now that they're in Europe. And he's coming out of Spain. We got Fili fighting out of Brazil. So it's going to be, a fiery contest in there. And both these guys like to get after it. They're pretty fun to watch too. When you see Fili's style, he is a guy that's very fast, and he mainly likes to work that 3-2. He does have good in and out movement. Like, he does a good job of not staying in the pocket and not sitting where he's going to be super hittable. His defense is pretty on point, and he's a big guy for the weight, and he's very fast. So a lot of the times, fighters are kind of hesitant to pressure him because he could take them down. So Fili could control the pace of the fight, back people up, and he's really good at working that 3-2 and eventually either landing that big left hook or kind of just outworking guys with numbers. He stays active, and he throws with a lot of power. He'll mix in some kicks too, but his kicks are okay. They just aren't that set up. They aren't that great overall. And when you see in terms of his wrestling, I would say his wrestling is average. He tends to be willing to strike, but when fighters pressure him and try to make it more of a war, that's when he'll mix it up, look to level change. And he's good at working the double and then circling to the back and in slams. He seems pretty strong, and then once he can get to that back position, he's good at backpacking you, getting that body triangle in, and then just either submitting you or riding out the position until the end of the round. And he has good enough cardio to do that for 3 rounds. So Fili, he's a pretty good fighter overall, but he isn't the best when you can pressure him and you could defend the takedowns. You could start landing on him and getting to him. And then also, I do believe that his leg kick defense isn't the greatest, which Daniel Alvarez has very nice kicks. So I think that could potentially be an issue for Fili, and he needs to be a little bit more diligent checking kicks in this particular matchup. But when we go over to the Daniel Alvarez side, he's a fast starter. He's a guy that pushes the pace, and he's extremely fast and very sharp on the feet like Fili. I would say he's a bit of a better striker. He does a good job of stays very tall. Like, he stands very tall so he can move in and out, but he's good at defending takedowns even with that stance, and he throws real nice kicks to all parts of the body, heavy leg kicks, and he has power with his 1-2s. Sometimes he can kind of like not really work in a range the best. Like, he can throw shots from out of position and get countered, and guys that stick and move and could really use their footwork can be effective against bars. But I feel like this particular matchup, it's a good matchup for bars because both these guys tend to like to be the person leading the dance, being in the middle of the cage. And I feel like Barres is a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster with his hands, has better boxing, and I think that his kicks, especially the leg kicks, could pay dividends for him. And when we're looking in terms of the grappling and wrestling for Barres, I would say his takedown defense is something that's going to be an issue in this fight potentially. He could get doubled or allow Filo to work his way to the back and just lose off control time. That's why this fight's close, because I do think that his takedown defense needs a lot of work, but he does have very good grappling. He's active off his back. He's hard to hold down. And when he gets on top, he'll go for submissions as well. And he has quite a few. Sometimes he'll give up position for the submission, but his activity in the grappling is there for sure. And he does push a pace. He has great cardio, even being a little bit older. And it's a tough one because, like I said, I do think that potentially Filo could get him down and hold him down for 2 out of 3 rounds or 3 out of 3 rounds. I don't necessarily think Filo can submit him or finish him on the ground, but I think he could control him if he can get him down potentially. But I'm going to say Barres wins this one 29-28 in a competitive fight. I could see Filo coming out early, using his speed, landing some, eventually hitting the takedown and baking that round. But I think second and third, Barres will be a little bit sharper and a little bit better condition because Filo's going to be going for the takedowns. I think Barres might stuff a couple and then start to take over. And I'm going to go with Barres by decision in this one. But close fight, I think it could go either way, to be honest. And in terms of value, it's like a pick'em odds. I agree with that. I don't really see a lot of value in this fight. I think that it's a pass for me, honestly. And up next here, we got a girl that's getting a lot of hype, and I'm not really sure why, with Shauna Bannon taking on Bruno Brazil. Like, I saw Shauna Bannon got to be on Ariel Helwani's show today. I didn't watch the interview or anything, but I really don't see anything special with Shauna Bannon. She's 29 years old, so not like she's that young or like a super prospect, but she is 5-0. She's won 10 fights in a row if you go back to her amateur career. She's Irish, and she's an all-rounder on the feet. She is pretty fast, and she has that wide-bladed stance. She likes to be all the way in or all the way out, and she could switch stance, and she's pretty good at cutting the cage off. She closes the distance fast. Like, she has kind of like that karate ability to move in and out quickly, and she'll throw big overhands. She has long arms, so she can land from farther out, and she likes to throw 3-2s, 2-3s, and it seems like she has okay punching power. She'll also use a lot of lead leg side kicks. She'll use those kicks to the body and the head, and she could struggle against pressure fighters, though, girls that will stand up to her and not back up and just try to exchange in the pocket. She has bad defense. She has her hands down, and fighters that land on her clean, they make her have a little bit of awkward reactions to getting hit, and I don't think she really likes being hit that much or has been hit that clean in a lot of her fights, and I don't think she's ever fought an opponent as clean and technical with the striking as Brazil, or with someone with the head kick quite like Brazil's either. Bannon, I think in this fight she needs to be aggressive with the hands, pressure, throw combinations, and try to mix in the takedowns. She has to avoid getting in a finesse striking battle or a kicking war with Brazil because you're playing right into Brazil's game at that point, and I think Bruno would get the better of that. But Bannon will use her striking to kind of push girls against the cage, and she has good clinch control. She doesn't really have the best wrestling, but she will look for trips and takedowns, and when she can get on top, she's fairly effective. But she's still developing. I mean, if she faces a high-level wrestler, I think she will get held down and laid on herself or held against a cage. With this particular matchup, I expect Bannon to be stronger in the clinch, but it's kind of hard to say. And in terms of the grappling and wrestling, I want to say Bannon has the advantage as well, but it's also kind of difficult to say because Brazil does have a good guillotine. I've seen Bannon get put on her back, and I think she definitely has to avoid that in this fight. But she is aggressive with her jiu-jitsu, and it seems like her grappling is probably her most dangerous asset along with her kick. She's very flexible, so she could take the back from weird positions and throw up triangles, and she has a fairly dangerous submission game. But Bruno Brazil, she has a lot to prove. She had a really bad debut in the UFC, and I feel like she fought well below her ability. But she's tall, long, she's athletic, and she does hold her hands low, and she does like to kind of use her length and be able to pull counter to avoid getting hit. And she also has very fast head kicks. But we saw Denise Gomes just walk her down and kind of throw in combination, walk through some of the counter strikes and land clean on Brazil and take her out. But I feel like Brazil wasn't fighting up to her full capabilities. I think if she could stay on the feet at range and use her length and her ability with her kicks and her distance control, she could definitely land on Bannon and start to pressure her and get the better of the striking. But it's a fight where it's like, it's tough because I don't think Brazil has as good a hands as Bannon. But if she could pressure, it could negate a lot of that. But Brazil has questionable wrestling and grappling, I would say. She does have some judo in her back pocket, and I've seen her get some takedowns. But takedown defense is a little bit average. She does have a good guillotine, but I don't know how she's going to do if she gets taken down against a girl like Bannon. She did sweep McCann in her Contender Series fight, was able to out-grapple her. And cardio-wise, Brazil holds up. She's a lot more experienced than Bannon is. And I feel like it's a close fight. I'm not sold on Bannon at all. So, personally, I'm going to go with Bruno Brazil. Pick her to win in a close decision. But this fight I really don't have a lot of interest in. And I'm not that invested in at all. Like, even from a pick standpoint, I feel like both these girls are kind of the lower level of the UFC, but I'm going to go with Brazil just because I think she's more skilled overall. She's fought better opponents too, so I'll go with Bruno Brazil in this one, but pretty unconfident. And up next, we got a pretty explosive fight with Chris Duncan taking on Yanal Ashmush. And Chris Duncan, he got his first UFC win in his last fight. He went in there against Omar Morales, got the job done in a decision that was pretty close, but I feel like Duncan edged it. He got the knockdown, and he was able to control the grappling and wrestling in a large portion of the fight. And Yanal Ashmush, he didn't need the judges. He barely needed any time to get his win in his first UFC fight. Went in there against another guy, London, UK guy, and knocked him out in the first round pretty quickly, less than a minute. So he's looking to replicate that performance or a similar one, get another win in London here. Both these guys actually fought on the last London card and got victories. And so we'll see what happens. But Chris Duncan, I feel like he should go the path of wrestling here like he did against Omar Morales. And a lot of people are looking back at his previous fights, and I do think that he did make some major improvements in his first UFC fight. His defense was a lot better. Seemed like he was a lot calmer, and he wasn't just winging that right hand and brawling as much as he usually does, and being a little bit more defensively responsible, which led to a lot lower volume, but he also didn't get clipped, and his chin is a little bit questionable at this point. So it was a better game plan, and then he used the wrestling, which is what I think he should do here. He has good strength against the cage. He can take guys down, good double leg, and then on top he has good top control. He isn't really someone that does a lot of damage or looks for submissions, but can grind you out. His cardio is on point. And then if he has to, he can dig in that back pocket and, show that grittiness. We all saw that fight with Charlie Campbell in the Contender Series where he looked like he was in a lot of trouble and then came back with a big right hand that knocked out Campbell with one shot. So Duncan, I think, even on the feet, is a little bit more diverse. Like, he will throw a little bit better hand combos. I think his punches are a little bit straighter, and he has a little bit better kicks. It's just his chin is a little questionable, and Ashmush is a guy that is very explosive. So I think wrestling him, taking away some of his power, and controlling him if you can for portions of the fight will be the smartest thing to do. And Duncan has the gas tank to do that. And for Ashmush, he's, like I said, to me, he's kind of like a guy that he reminds me of like a Spike Carlisle, where he isn't that skilled, but his power, explosiveness, athleticism make up for all that, and he can kind of just explode in sometimes and land these big overhand bombs, big looping punches, and knock guys out. Very explosive, closing the distance, and then he is decent at, like, he's good at timing. Like when you throw kicks at him, he'll jump in, and like his last fight, he caught the kick and then got the knockout win off that, and opportunistic finisher, but he can be backed up and be kind of low volume, and will just, if you can feign and back him up, you can get him to overextend and wing shots and then take him down. And his wrestling defense isn't that good, but he's very strong, so he's hard to hold down. He'll keep getting back up, and then he can take you down too, and when he gets on top, he can control you, work his ground and pound, and he has a very good gas tank. So he's kind of just like a Hulk. He's a beast that he can knock you out, and he has the cardio, and even though he's not that skilled anywhere, it's like his danger factor is there on the feet, and when you grapple with him, he has the strength to negate his wrestling deficiencies, and then when he gets on top, he can hold you down. So he's a fairly difficult guy to deal with, but I think Chris Duncan is just a little bit more technical. I think he's going to be the bigger guy. And I think he's going to win a decision in this one using his wrestling and kind of mixing it up. Ashmush is tough. I don't necessarily think he's going to get finished. So I do believe Chris Duncan by decision at plus 250 is a decent play. And I got Chris Duncan in this one. I think he's going to get the job done, mix it up, and go 2-0 in the UFC. And in this next matchup, man, I mean, to me, this is a brutal fight. It's going to be a tough one to watch. Ketlen Vieira versus Pannie Kianzad. Don't really got a lot to say about this one, to be honest with you. I'm not a big Ketlen Vieira guy. Like, I think she has some power. She throws that, okay left hook and the overhand, but really bad defense on the feet, stiff. She's plotty, no head movement, kind of like a punching bag defense. And I think Pannie has way better striking. Like, her hands are a lot more fluid. She has better boxing. Her defense is more on point. It's just, if she gets clipped with a heavy shot, Vieira definitely has that power advantage. And then what I think the fight's probably going to divulge into is just a clinch battle against the cage where both girls are just hugging each other against the fence, and it's going to be kind of a pick your poison type of who you think is winning the fight. I feel like Pannie is a little bit more active in the clinch, but if she gets taken down and just gives her back and Vieira backpacks her for 2 out of 3 rounds, and that's how she's going to lose the fight. I do feel like Kianzad's the better fighter. It's just the intangibles of Vieira being a big girl with good control when she gets on top, good clinch control against the cage, having some power. So how is Kianzad going to deal with that? Also, Kianzad's coming in here off of a pretty significant layoff. She hasn't fought in over a year. I'm going to go with Kianzad, though, just because I think she's the more skilled, talented fighter. I feel like Vieira's style has kind of been found out a little bit, and I think Kianzad, she performed well against Raquel. That fight really could have went either way, and I think that her ability to be a little bit more active in the clinch and just be a little bit better striker is going to get her the victory. So I'm going to go with Kianzad by decision in this fight. In this next matchup, this should be a great fight, man. I mean, Bryan Barberena is one of my personal favorite fighters that I've been watching over the last few years, and it's not like he's ever been a title threat guy, or someone that's been at the top of the division, but he just produces every time out there. I'm a big fan of his style, the inside fighting, being a kind of a action fighter, but this is a difficult matchup here, man. He's moving up to 185 pounds. I've heard rumblings of him announcing his retirement after his contract's up, so that would be pretty soon. And he's facing Makhmud Muradov, who's coming in here off 2 losses in a row. He hasn't actually won since 2021, so he's going to be hungry. And he's a very dangerous guy, explosive with power. And he had a really bad performance against Gerald Meerschaert where didn't look like himself and got finished in that one. But his last fight he lost, but he looked a lot better in that one against Kyle Barallo. He was more on point with his wrestling actually in that fight, and he looked good. And it's been a little bit since that one, so we're going to see if he's made even more improvements. But I would say he's been kind of a busted prospect so far. He's gone 3-2 in the UFC. When he came into the UFC and after he won the first 3 fights that he had in the company, he was on like a 18-19 fight winning streak, and he was, I believe, one of the biggest favorites in UFC history to lose when he lost to GM3. He was over a minus 1,000 favorite, and so he definitely has to beat Barberena and then win a couple more to get back into the position where people thought he was before that loss, and he's lost a lot of stock. But this is a good fight for him to kind of get back on the horse, and Barberena, it's another chance for him to prove a lot of people wrong and come in and get another win as a big underdog. But stylistically, if this was just a straight-up stand-up fight, I would favor Barberena. I mean, Muradov, maybe he could catch him with one of those long lever strikes, kicks, and knock him out with the shot down the middle. I think attacking the body of Barberena is obviously proven to be more fruitful than hitting him to the head. It's like you can hit him to the head a million times, he's never going to fall down, right? We saw that in the Luque fight. But he is facing a bigger guy here at Muradov, so we're going to have to see if he could take damage exactly the same. But if he can, it's just, I think over time his pressure and his inside game will prevail against Muradov, because I think he has the elbows, the knees, and he has the ability to take shots, work his way in. He has pretty solid boxing, good combos, and very high volume guy that can kind of Homer Simpson his way to victories at times. And then I do think he doesn't get credit for the skill that he has in close. But one thing that's always been kind of his Achilles heel throughout his career has been the wrestling defense. You could take him down very easily, and he's usually pretty good with not getting submitted and staying out of danger positions and going the full 15 minutes. But he did get submitted with the rear naked choke in his last 2 fights, and Muradov in his last one with Kyle Barallo hit several double legs. I feel like his wrestling looked a lot more on point in that one. And if he's smart, he's just going to take down Barberena. I don't think Barberena could stop the takedowns, and he could hold down Barberena easily. I mean, his top control looked pretty good. He's going to be a significantly bigger guy, and I think that's going to be the path to victory for him, man. There is possibility that Barberena is not going to be able to take the shots against a heavy hitter up 15 pounds. 15 pounds is a pretty significant jump, but if Barberena is still as durable as he usually is, I think this fight's going to go a little longer, and I think Muradov's going to probably end up winning in the later rounds or by decision. But I feel like Muradov's going to have to use the wrestling and mix it up to get the win here, and I think he will from what I saw in his last fight. So I'm going to say Muradov comes back, it's his first win in a couple years, and beats Bryan Barberena. In this next fight, Mick Parkin versus Jamal Pogues. I had a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but I had a few people actually message me last week because I said that, I'm not a big fan of certain female fights. Like, I was talking about Aline Perez versus Ashley Evans Smith. Like, fuck, man, I didn't realize Aline Perez had so many fans. But people are, coming at me, saying, how could you not like female fights? It's like, bro, I like certain fights for sure. It's not about that. But it's the same thing with this one, man. I'm going to talk shit about this fight, too. These heavyweight fights where it's like the last one Jamal Pogues did versus Josh Parisian. I put this in the same kind of category, low-level heavyweight slot fest here. Mick Parkin making his UFC debut. He's taking on Jamal Pogues. And Parkin, he's the guy that's from London, or at least he's from the UK. I don't know exactly what city he was born in, but he trains with Aspinall and Phil DeFries and kind of that heavyweight crew that's over there. So obviously he's getting some good training in, and he's like a real sloppy poor man's version of Aspinall, I'd say. He's fast, he has pretty good boxing, he likes to slip and rip, and then his grappling looks on point, but he doesn't have the same snap with his punches. He doesn't have the same punching speed, technique, or power, really. He likes to, slip way off and then throw that big hook, which I think that he could get head kicked by doing that, but obviously at heavyweight, it's like, I don't think Jamal Pogues is probably going to be likely to kick him in the head, but I guess we'll see. But Parkin, I've seen him, he has decent hand combos, but he sits in the pocket and he's right there to be hit and countered. I've seen him dropped, and I do feel like Pogues is the faster, more athletic guy. It's just Parkin brings that kind of workman, serviceable striking, where it's like he's going to stay solid for 15 minutes, and Pogues is going to fight in bursts and try to conserve energy and then explode, and he'll get tired regardless. So Parkin will be more steady, but Pogues has the ability to maybe be more eye-catching and win enough minutes to steal a decision. But Parkin, his wrestling kind of sucks, I would say. Bad defensive wrestling, but he has good for a heavyweight. He'll throw up submissions off his back. He could hit sweeps. He can get back up to his feet. And I think he has better grappling than Pogues, especially if he can get on top. His top control is on point, and he's gotten some finishes from that top position. But Pogues probably has the better wrestling, I would say. And I've seen Parkin pull guys on top of him and let guys mount him and just be really sloppy in some wrestling exchanges. So that's probably the weakest area I would say that he has. And we all know Pogues, the guy can wrestle pretty effectively. It's just if he takes down Parkin a couple times and Parkin, uses his, ability to stand back up to his feet or sweep, then is Pogues going to keep that cardio, or is Parkin going to take over and finish him at the tail end of the fight, or win a decision by squeaking those last 2 rounds? And I really don't have a strong opinion on this fight. I feel like Pogues, if he comes in shape and isn't really on point, he could honestly probably dominate the fight, maybe even get a KO TKO finish. But the Pogues that we've been seeing lately, like the one that fought Parisian, it could be a real kind of close type of decision. And because it's in England and Parkin is going to be the fan favorite and all of that, I'm kind of leaning towards Parkin to get the job done in this one. I think Parkin's going to be the guy that's looking fresher down the stretch, tail end of the second and third, and he could even get a finish late. It's just Pogues is, pretty durable, and Parkin, to me, isn't that great. So I'm going to pick Parkin by decision in this one. Parkin hasn't fought in a while, and he's training with those guys over there. Like I said, Phil DeFries, who's a great grappler, and then Aspinall, who's obviously one of the best talents at heavyweight that we have today. So I'm going to pick Parkin by decision, but I feel like Pogues, if he shows up really on point, he'll probably win this one. But I'm going to go with Parkin, in England, in his home country. Pogues, I don't really trust him. Even if this fight was in America, now you're throwing in some travel and a crowd that's going to be booing him and things like that. So I'm just going to go with Parkin by decision. In this next fight, we got an interesting one. We got Marc Diakiese versus Joel Alvarez, and 2 guys that have been around the UFC for a while now, 2 guys that have had success in the UFC, but recently, Joel Alvarez had that big win streak snapped where he fought Arman Tsarukyan, got dominated, and ended up getting finished with those elbows on the ground. And he hasn't fought in a while. It's been over a year for Marc Diakiese. He is coming off that loss to Michael Johnson that kind of snapped his momentum where he had that 2 or 3 fight win streak. But he's always been a guy that's kind of not been able to get over that hump, and now he's kind of fighting for his career again here. I don't think he's necessarily going to get cut with a loss, but all these fights are super important for Diakiese because I don't think he can afford too many L's before he's going to get his walking papers. Honestly, he has to eventually break through that cusp, or I don't really know why the UFC is going to not just pay a prospect to take his job and pay them less money. But in terms of this matchup, it's an intriguing one because I do think if they're at range, I think Diakiese is going to have a big edge. I mean, he's going to have to be moving quite a bit on his feet, stay on the outside, and then kind of pull Alvarez in those big shots, throw some nice kicks. But we all know how Alvarez fights. He's going to be on the gas pedal, pressuring forward. Sometimes he can get a little bit static and just stand at range and kind of plod inside, which against Diakiese, we have to see more of the Alvarez that showed up against Thiago Moises, where he was very aggressive. He was throwing knees and kind of trying to push the pace. Sometimes he gets stuck kind of trying to jab and feint and then catch that counter check hook, but he can't afford to do that against Diakiese because I don't think he has the speed advantage. And Diakiese's a guy that likes to mix in the wrestling a lot, and if you look on his social media, he's been training with the English wrestling team, Olympic wrestling team, and he's been doing a lot of wrestling, it seems like. So maybe he's going to try to come into this one, take Alvarez down and beat him up from the top position, throw elbows, and try to defend the submissions, which could easily happen. I'm honestly not super bullish on Alvarez like some other people, but I just don't trust Diakiese's fight IQ. I think he's a flake a little bit, and I just feel like Alvarez is probably going to be aggressive on the feet where it makes Diakiese want to take him down, and Diakiese's going to be able to take him down easily. We all know Alvarez really doesn't even defend takedowns. He's 0% takedown defense, but I feel like he's going to get guillotined or he's going to get caught from Alvarez when he's in full guard. And I'm picking Alvarez by submission in the first, second, or third. I don't really know what is going to happen, but I think Diakiese's going to look good. I think Diakiese's probably the guy that should win this fight, but I just feel like Alvarez is that opportunistic finishing type of guy that's going to steal the win here. So I'm going to go with Alvarez, and I'll say he wins via second round submission. And in my opinion, this next fight, from a viewing perspective, is one of the best matchups on the card. We got UFC veteran Danny Roberts. He's the English fighter. He's welcoming Jonny Parsons, a guy from the USA, to fight in the UK here against him. And he's a 13-fight UFC veteran. He's lost 2 fights in a row, though. And he's fun to watch, but he's definitely been up and down during his UFC career. Roberts, he's a southpaw plus athlete. Roberts is tall. He's rangy. He's pretty powerful. He uses a wide stance. He likes to fight off the back foot and pull fighters into his 1-2s or his head kicks. He has a good counter check hook. On the inside, Roberts gets real wild, though. He just tends to brawl, and he has big hook power, but it's a 50-50 firefight at that point, and he has a bad chin. He's taken a lot of damage. He's been finished by strikes 4 times, and a few of those knockouts have been brutal. Leg kicks are also, I think, a potential issue for Roberts here. He doesn't check kicks the best, and Parsons is going to be throwing those leg kicks early and often. I think Roberts has to move, stay long, fight, and be smart, fight smart if he wants to win here. He's improved his wrestling a little bit, Danny Roberts, but I don't really see his wrestling being that effective. It's sloppy, and Parsons has good enough takedown defense. Cardio-wise, Roberts has improved his composure, his cardio, since joining Sanford, but I still think he doesn't have the best cardio overall. For Jonny Parsons, he's a Muay Thai striker, a very composed, sharp, technical guy. He has good feints, pressure, holds the center well, throws hard kicks to the legs and body, and he's fast with his head kicks. Sharp, accurate hands, 1-2s, 1-1-2s, 3-2s. He'll go to the body, and he really has a really nice counter left hook, good uppercut. On the inside, he dirty boxes well. He has nice elbows. He throws heat. He can end the fight with one shot. I definitely think he has the power to knock Danny Roberts out. He did get dropped a couple times early against Solomon Renfro, but he has really good experience and composure, so he can recover quickly. He's very hard to get out of there. He ended up winning the final 2 rounds and beating Renfro to earn his UFC contract. And Parsons does good kick defense. He checks kicks well. Wrestling, grappling-wise, his takedown defense is on point. When he gets taken down, he can be held down, but I don't really think Roberts is going to be able to do that. It is possible because Roberts has implemented some wrestling heavy game plans in the past, but I feel like Parsons is going to be able to negate that. And the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is Parsons has had a layoff due to some concussion symptoms where he didn't really recover well after getting his bell rung in training. And hopefully we don't see some, or I think he got knocked out cold, he said, but hopefully we don't see some, issues from that in this fight and he gets finished quickly. But I think Jonny Parsons is going to get the knockout win in this one. I just feel like his effective pressure striking, composure, his counters are going to be what rules the day here. I mean, Roberts may start well, but I think over time Parsons is going to break him down, and he's built for war a little bit more at this stage. And as long as the layoff, like I said, the travel doesn't affect Parsons, I'll say he lands a lot of low kicks and starts to kind of limit Roberts' movement and then takes him out in the second round with a big left hook. So I'm going to go with Jonny Parsons in this one via knockout. And we're closing out the prelims with the fight of the night contender with Davey Grant taking on Daniel Marcos. Both these guys, they're strikers at heart. They want to get in there. They want to throw down, and it should be really fun to watch. Davey Grant obviously is the UFC veteran. He's 37 years old at this point, and he's been up and down, since he kind of made that comeback a few years ago. But, man, I mean, he's been fun to watch every single time. He's tested prospects, almost got the victory at a split decision loss against Adrian Yanez. And he's taken some other guys out. Like, he did knock out Jonathan Martinez. He was able to get a couple other really nice victories. So, the guy's legit for sure. And he's taken on someone that had their UFC debut in their last fight. And he looked really impressive in that one, got the victory, ended up winning by decision in that fight. And, man, this is an interesting one. I mean, when you look at how these guys operate, Marcos is the much cleaner striker. The guy stands tall, he's light on his feet, moves in and out really well. Real hard leg kicks. Throws nice 1-2s, good counters. He likes to pressure, feint, draw you out, and then pull counter you. Very clean. But we did see in his fight on the Contender Series, he got a little bit tired in the third round. That was after really beating the brakes off that guy, and that opponent was super tough. So he kind of ended up getting Marcos a little bit gassed, but Marcos honestly still won that third round, so it's not like his cardio fell off a cliff. And the issue with Marcos that we've seen is he can get held against the cage, and his wrestling is a little questionable. But in this matchup, he's probably not going to have to deal with that much wrestling. Davey Grant, if he was smart, I think would probably test that. But being in front of the crowd in London, I think the guy's going to throw down, give the fans what they want. And Davey Grant, he's a guy that likes to throw a lot of wild shots. The guy throws big overhands, big heavy hooks. Has really good ability to move in and out and kind of just be very, very aggressive. He throws good kicks too, and he has good grappling, defense, and his offensive wrestling, when he wants to use it, is all right. He has okay grappling too, and he's just a dog. He sticks in there. He takes a lot of damage, and when you slow down and you start to be a little bit more susceptible, your hands come down, you're not moving quite as well, that's when he comes forward and lands big bombs and could take you out. So the guy's wily, but I'm leaning more towards Daniel Marcos in this one. I feel like he has the craft to get the job done here. I think he's going to be the cleaner, superior striker, and I don't think that Grant's going to have the wrestling or the pace because of Marcos's leg kicks. I think he'll be able to control Grant's pressure a little bit with that, and I feel like he'll control the pace a little bit. And I think that Grant could potentially land some big shots, but Marcos will take them. He'll eat them. He hasn't really had that wear and tear yet, and I've seen him eat some decent shots. So I'm going with Marcos in this one by decision. I could see him winning late via KO TKO, but I'll say that Grant gets to that final bell. We saw his fight with Marlon Vera and some other guys, and he could take a lot of punishment. So I'll say Marcos wins by decision. And kicking off the main card here, we got LaRon Murphy taking on Josh Culibao. And this is a fight that I'm looking forward to. It's two really high level guys outside the top 15. But in terms of prediction, I'm having a hard time. I'm kind of splitting hairs trying to predict between these two guys because I think they both have paths to victory. But Lerone Murphy, he's going to be the bigger guy in there, the stronger guy in there. And he's a very skilled striker. I mean, the guy could switch stance. He has really nice 1-2s. He has a stiff jab. He has power and very accurate striking, very clean. His kicks are okay. He doesn't have the greatest kicks. And I feel like when he can land that right hand on anyone, he can hurt them. And he cuts the cage off well. He makes his presence bigger than it is by being right in guys' faces for the majority of the fight. And he's improved his wrestling and grappling quite a bit. I mean, the guy used to be an easy takedown, and he still can be taken down fairly easily, but he's improved that quite a bit. And he's also gotten better with his ability to scramble, get-ups, and when he gets on top, we've seen he has brutal ground and pound. He could take guys out real easily. And we've even seen him get a couple takedowns himself against the cage. He's strong. He can kind of get you down to the ground from there. And I wouldn't be shocked if Culibau's getting him some issues with the speed, that Lerone Murphy pushes him against the cage, uses his strength, and maybe can get a takedown or two off the cage. But for Josh Culibau, he's a guy that in this fight he's going to have to be using what he, has been his calling card throughout his whole UFC career, which is his speed. He has to stick and move. I would throw combos and then try to get in, get out. And he's going to have to avoid being in that firefight or getting clipped with that right hand, because I don't think he has the power to kind of engage in that type of battle with Murphy. And he has to be very diligent to stay moving and, keep his speed and make it more of a finesse fight. And then Culibau is good grappling in his own right, but I don't think he really has the ability. I don't think he's going to be able to take down or try to take down Murphy. And I believe that Murphy could potentially take down Culibau. I'm a little bit weary regarding Culibau's grappling takedown defense. I don't think it's the greatest. I don't think it's been tested that much. And it's a close fight. I feel like it could go, either way. But I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy in this one because I just feel like if the striking is close, I trust him a little bit more to be able to mix it up better. And I think he has the power edge, so maybe he lands the bigger shots. He's also fighting at home. So with those things, along with him being the bigger guy too, I think Murphy's going to get it done. I'll say he wins by decision in a competitive closer. And we got another fun one here with Jai Herbert taking on Ziam. And on the feet, I feel like both these guys are pretty similar. Jai Herbert is a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, and he, I would say, is a little bit more basic. Like Ziam throws more kicks and flying attacks, and I think Ziam's a little bit faster and sleeker. But Jai Herbert, he has big power, throws nice jabs, 1-2s right down the pipe, has a really good head kick, and he's a dangerous guy that has very clean striking. Both these guys have good footwork. They have good distance control. They move in and out well. They're very effective with their feints, controlling distance. So high-level striking fight. I feel like Ziam's going to be more active. He's going to be throwing kicks. He's going to be throwing more hand combos. And Herbert may not be quite as active, but his shots might count more if he can land the right shots on Ziam. He could hurt him and be very effective in that manner. But I think that Ziam is clearly the superior grappler in this matchup. I think that he's making big improvements, man. I mean, the guy's young, and I thought in his last fight he looked really good. He got several takedowns, and he mixed it up really good. So I'm impressed with Ziam. I'm impressed with the improvements he's making. And Herbert's older. He's getting up there in age. I feel like the takedown offense from Ziam could be effective. It could make Herbert a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger, and it could make him tired, not as powerful in the later rounds. I think Ziam could hold up a little bit better. And I think Ziam is just going to be able to use his youthfulness, his speed advantage. I think he has the speed and footwork edge, even though both these guys are very good with that. I think that Ziam clearly has a wrestling advantage, which I think is going to be the big key. And I feel like he's going to be able to get the win here over Jai Herbert. Herbert's a good fighter. He's a great striker. But I think Ziam is the younger guy that's evolving more, that has more to grow in the sport, and is going to get the jump on Herbert here. So I'm going to go Ziam to win this fight. And up next here we got Paul Craig versus Andre Muniz. And this is a really interesting matchup. Two guys that you can kind of argue maybe have the best jiu-jitsu in the division. And we're going to find out, if they tangle on the ground, who has a better jiu-jitsu between the two of them. But Paul Craig, he's a guy that is a known commodity at this point. He has a win over, I guess not that he doesn't have a win over the champ anymore with Jamal Hill vacating the belt, but he has a big win over Jamal Hill. He's gotten a win over Nikita Krylov, so he's been able to go in there. He got a win over Makhmud and Kalaev, so he's beaten some real high-level guys, but then he's also had bad performances. In his last fight, he got knocked out by Johnny Walker. Before that, he lost to Ozdemir. So it's just kind of a do-or-die fight for him in terms of trying to stick around in the mix in that top 10, top 15. And Andre Muniz, he's someone that went up really fast on the UFC scene. He won 3-4 fights in a row. His last fight, he fought Brendan Allen and ended up losing that one, getting finished on the ground in a fight where obviously that had to be a little bit embarrassing with his background. But this fight, I think stylistically, is a lot better matchup for Andre Muniz. I mean, when you look at the striking, both guys are grappling-centric, but I feel like Muniz is bigger, longer, and he's sharper on the feet with his hands. Craig is just throwing a lot of weird shots, spinning attacks, and doesn't really have any rhythm or rhyme to his striking to me, whereas Muniz, I think, has improved in that area. And I feel like Muniz has the better wrestling, too. He's the more explosive fighter. Paul Craig does a lot of pulling guard, and he isn't necessarily the greatest wrestler, whereas Muniz does have a nice double leg. And it's going to be an interesting battle because Paul Craig likes being on his back. Muniz likes being on top. And I feel like Muniz is too good, too experienced to get submitted from full guard off bottom by Paul Craig. I think that he's going to be able to kind of dominate from the top position, and I honestly think he's going to get the submission. We've seen Jimmy Crute submit Paul Craig in the past, and I know that's the only time that Paul Craig has been submitted, but I feel like Muniz is just going to be that little bit better. But Paul Craig, he should have the cardio edge, and if he can make it a wild fight, maybe at the end he could catch a submission if Muniz is tired, or he could maybe even get a crazy type knockout. But I'm favoring Muniz more, and I'm going to say he gets it done via submission in the first round. And continuing through the card here, we got Nathaniel Wood taking on Andre Fili. This is a fight between two guys that are down to brawl, but are also very technical, and should be a good one. Nathaniel Wood, he's recently moved up to 145. He got the win over Charles Rosa in his first 145 fight, then came back, got another victory in his last one, so he's 2-0 so far in this weight class. Fili had a good showing in his last fight. He beat Bill Algeo and looked pretty solid. And Fili, he's a guy that's been around for a long time. He is young in terms of age, but in terms of, MMA age, he's a lot older. He has been in the UFC for almost a decade at this point, if not over 10 years. And he's been fighting, some of the highest level fighters since the beginning. So he's a very good guy that's been around for a long time, but he, in my opinion, was a little bit better a few years ago. His hands were faster, sharper. He had cleaner counters. His last fight, his kicks were on point, but I feel like his hands were a little bit slower, and he was a little bit plottier with his footwork as well. And Fili's always been a guy that's had good pull counters, good length, but his defense isn't the greatest. He can be hit, and he likes to fight in the pocket. He has a dangerous kind of style. He has a good head kick, and his double leg's on point. I think he should try to grapple in this one and mix it up. It was impressive that he was able to control the back of Bill Algeo in his last fight in the third round, and Algeo's a guy that is notorious for being extremely hard to control on the mat. So that was impressive from Fili. But yeah, I feel like in this one he needs to use that wrestling, mix it up to try to beat a guy like Nathaniel Wood. And cardio wise, Fili always comes in good shape, and he always is someone that's willing to fight hard. I do think his chin is a little suspect at this point. He's taking a lot of damage. We've seen him dropped in fights. We've seen him finish by strikes quick in a recent loss against Joe Anderson Brito. And Nathaniel Wood, he flashed a lot of power in his last fight. He was rocking his opponent, and he got a couple of knockdowns. And I feel like Nathaniel Wood, he has very good boxing, and both these guys like to live in the pocket, but I think Wood is a little bit sharper. Wood is a southpaw. He has nice leg kicks too, which I think could be effective in this fight. And Wood's takedown defense and overall grappling defense is a little bit questionable, but I do think he's improved a lot with his takedown defense, even though it hasn't been tested. He was able to defend the majority of the takedowns against Charles Rosa, who isn't a great grappler or wrestler, but he's solid. And I feel like Wood on the feet is going to be able to get inside and land those counter hooks. He's going to be the faster guy in and out with his feet. He's going to be able to manipulate distance and control distance better. I think the leg kicks are going to be a factor. I feel like his power is going to be a factor. And I actually think Nathaniel Wood is going to get the knockout in this one. I don't know if it's going to be the first or second round, but I feel like Nathaniel Wood's going to catch him and hurt Fili and then put him out here. So Nathaniel Wood finally getting to fight in England where he's been wanting to fight for a long time. It's disappointing. I feel like they should have thrown that Laurent Murphy versus Wood fight. You know, they're both on the same card. They should have gave it to us. They have some beef. But Fili versus Wood's a really good fight anyways. And I'm going to pick Nathaniel Wood. I'll say he gets the KO TKO finish. And in the co-main event, we got Molly McCann versus Julija Stoliarenko, or Julia Stoliarenko. Excuse me, I always say that name wrong, man. Fuck. But, yeah, but, man, I guess they're still trying to shove Molly McCann down her throats as, you know, a viable title contender and top fighter for female weight classes. But in the UK, I guess it works. She's gotten 2 spectacular knockouts over there, too, so maybe she's earned it, I guess. Her last fight, she went in there and had a really one-sided loss, so definitely needs to bounce back from that. Julia Stoliarenko, she also got dominated, finishing the first round. Her last fight against Chelsea Chandler, and Stoliarenko has been 1-4 in the UFC, so obviously they're trying to bring in a girl for McCann to look good against, but Stoliarenko does have some danger factor to her, and she's the far superior grappler, so she does have, you know, some upset potential written on her, but I feel like on the feet, Stoliarenko, she has decent combinations and she'll look for the counter hooks, but she's so open to be countered and hit, and I feel like Molly McCann's striking actually has improved quite a bit. Like, she moves in and out really well, she feints good, and she's gotten a lot better at switching stance, giving different looks, and landing her punching combination. She's mixing in those spinning attacks and different striking arsenal that she's bringing. So I feel like McCann's turned into a pretty good, dangerous striker, and Stoliarenko is very vulnerable on the feet. She's very hittable, and she's been knocked out in the past multiple times. But Stoliarenko is going to be looking to pull McCann into the takedowns, time that double leg, and obviously when Stoliarenko gets on the ground, whether she's on top or on bottom, she's always looking to hit that arm bar. She's kind of an arm bar specialist, and when she hasn't been able to hit the arm bar, she's usually lost, so she definitely needs to go in there and try to get it to the ground, or I think she's going to end up getting finished. And McCann's takedown defense, overall grappling defense, has obviously been a big issue for her. We saw in her last fight she got dominated on the ground and finished, so I do think that McCann has improved in that realm, but I don't necessarily know if she gets taken down or put on her back against Julia Stoliarenko that she's going to be able to survive. But I feel like McCann, I'm going to pick her to win by knockout in the first round in this one. I just think she's going to be a little bit too clean and technical on the feet. I think Stoliarenko is going to get lost a little bit, and McCann's going to be able to catch her and kind of put her out. I don't know if it'll be a clean KO or kind of like a standing TKO, but I think McCann will get the job done. The under in this fight's kind of appealing to me, even though it's a little bit juiced. But yeah, I feel like McCann's going to get the win in this one. If she does get taken down, I think she's in big danger, but I'm going to say she keeps it standing and gets the victory. And then finally, we got the main event here. We got a fight that's been brewing for a long time. Marcin Tybura called out Tom Aspinall years ago, and Aspinall actually accepted the fight, but it never ended up materializing back then. And then obviously Aspinall had that bad injury against Curtis Blades, and he's been out for, I don't know if it's been a year, but he's been out for quite a while at this point. And Tybura has gone on and picked up some big victories. He got that win over Alexander Romanov, which was probably the biggest win on his run that he's had recently. But Tybura, he's won like 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 fights in the UFC, and he's been killing it. He's been fighting a kind of lower level of opposition, and now he's finally getting this big opportunity, man. He had the opportunity against Volkov, came up short, but now he's fighting in Europe, in London, against Tom Aspinall. He's one of the biggest stars out of the UK. And if he can go in there and use his wrestling, use his cage control, and beat Tom Aspinall, then he's going to become one of, the biggest prospects. Not prospects, he's been in the UFC for a long time. One of the biggest, names surrounding, a potential title shot in the UFC heavyweight division. You can't deny him at that point. His streak that he's been on and then getting a win like that, he would be right there. But Tom Aspinall, he's looking to come back and re-announce himself as a future UFC title contender, champion, and what he needs to do is run through Marcin Tybura if he's going to do that. His knee injury against Curtis Blades cost him his perfect record in the UFC, but wasn't like he was undefeated, so he's lost before. Hopefully he comes back and is looking better than ever. But man, in terms of how they match up, I think obviously on the feet, Tom Aspinall has a huge advantage with his striking. His boxing is some of the best boxing in the heavyweight division. Very fast hands, very technical. And Tybura, he's improved his striking, but he's still not nearly on the level of Aspinall. And we've seen Tybura struggle in the past with speedy strikers that, can touch his chin. He's also been knocked out. He doesn't necessarily have the greatest punch resistance. And Aspinall, I believe is one of the best pure strikers in the weight class. So if it stays standing, I think that even though Tybura's made those improvements, he has a dangerous head kick and his striking with the hands isn't terrible, I think Aspinall will be able to overwhelm him and get him out of there. And, Tybura's going to be looking to use his size, put him against the cage, get those takedowns. He's one of the most prolific takedown guys in UFC heavyweight history, but Aspinall, he has great jiu-jitsu. His wrestling looks like it's improved and gone up a notch. In the past, if you look back and you watch some of his fights, he's been taken down and held down, and he's gotten even submitted in the past. But I believe, or I can't remember. I don't know if it was submitted or ground and pounded, but he's been finished on the ground. And I feel like he's just leveled up from that, though. I don't know if Aspinall's just going to be able to take him down that easy and do that to him, or Tybura, excuse me. So I'm leaning towards Aspinall to come back and get the win, be victorious here, but that line is off, man. I don't know how you could justify him being like a minus 500 favorite. I wouldn't be parlaying that or anything, but I'm going to pick Aspinall, so I'm going to say he gets the knockout in the first or second. But there you have it, guys. That's my full card breakdown and prediction video for UFC London, UFC Fight Night, Tom Aspinall versus Marcin Tybura. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something. As far as my part of the week and my most confident pick for the part of the week on this fight card, I'm going to go with, I'll say Makhmud Muradov and Molly McCann. For my most confident pick, I'll say it'll be Tom Aspinall. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said at the beginning of the video, make sure to hit the like button. Let's try to get 100 likes. Put some comments down below. Would really appreciate some interaction on this video. And if you want access to some bets that I have, we're coming off an excellent week last week. And there is Cage Warriors this week. There's LFA. There's ACA. There's Octagon MMA. Or Octagon MMA, I believe, is next week. But there's quite a few events this week. So make sure to go over to Patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru to support the channel. Get access to some of the best betting tips on the internet. And I would really appreciate that too. So thanks, guys, for watching the video. I'll be back soon breaking down another UFC fight card. And so make sure to stay plugged into the channel.